Last year, Spider-Man No Way Home swung into theaters, destroyed the box office, and delivered one crowd pleaser of a film. And one of the big reasons for that is it just delivered a fantastic final battle that was just so satisfying. Today we're gonna stop and rank all 11 Spider-Man final battles from the worst to the best. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by BetterHelp. In 2022, I want to do a better job processing the stress of life. The constant chaos of the last couple of years, combined with the disruption of normal life, as well as a lot more isolation from people, it takes a toll, and there's just been a lot to process. And one of the best ways to process everything that's happening, as well as establishing better mental health habits, is with a licensed therapist. With BetterHelp, you can access their network of 20,000 licensed therapists. It's not self-help, it's not a crisis line, it's online, secure, professional therapy. You can log into your account at any time to message your therapist, and you'll get a well thought out and timely response. Also, you can schedule weekly video chats or phone calls with your therapist. Visit betterhelp.com/Sean Chandler and join over 2 million people in taking charge of your mental health with the help of an experienced professional. If you're not familiar with my story, about 10 years ago, there was a 3-year stretch of time where I had a lot of personal struggles and I didn't know where to turn for help at that time. And that took me to some really dark places. You don't need to struggle alone like I did. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Sean Chandler, and let's get started. In last place, Venom. Now, this is a movie that each time I watch it, I actually like it a little bit more, but the finale leaves a lot to be desired. Superficially speaking, it's a fight between two identical looking dark creatures on a dark bridge at nighttime, and then they literally start blob fighting where they combine with one another. It tries to have some emotional stakes where they fake kill off Eddie and then they fake kill off Venom, but none of it's really convincing. You know Eddie's not going to die, and you know Venom's not going to die, so you don't really feel anything at the moments where supposedly something mortally wounding has happened to them.
Goodbye, Eddie.
Venom, no! And then on a deeper level, it feels like the final segment about this rocket taking off came out of nowhere. I mean, it was only set up moments before in the film. It just feels like we jumped into the third act, like the screenwriter realized, oh no, all right, we need to have a final fight in this thing. And so it doesn't feel all that important. It just feels like they needed to have something happen. So the action wasn't exciting, there weren't emotional stakes, and it's not a particularly satisfying conclusion to the story that we were just told, so it comes in last place. Coming in at number 10 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I really like this movie,
Hot dog.
but the final battle is one of the least memorable sequences in the entire film. A big chunk of it is just kind of like this spy chase on a plane that is bland looking. It's a little bit cartoonish in nature because it is up in the sky, and so it doesn't really stand out all that much to me. And then when it gets to kind of the ground level, you just kind of have Vulture blowing himself up. There's not gigantic stakes here. There's not a lot of weight to it. There's not like a big character moment for Spider-Man or the Vulture by this point in time. All of that has kind of already happened before we get to this final little battle sequence. So while the movie as a whole I really enjoy, the final battle doesn't hurt the film at all, but it's not one of the things that elevates it either as a specific element. Number 9, The Amazing Spider-Man. This is another film that I think some people don't give it enough credit, but the finale isn't one of the strong points. A big part of that is that the Lizard scheme kind of comes out of nowhere, where you have a story that's a lot more personal, and then it felt like there were studio mandates that you had to have this big, gigantic threat for the entire city. So all of a sudden, the lizard's on top of a building trying to spray this stuff everywhere to turn everyone into lizards. And it's kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Add to that, it's nighttime. There's a lot of dark color schemes. And so the specific action itself between the lizard and Spider-Man, like, I don't remember any specific images from the fight itself. Where the sequence has a little bit of strength to it is there are a couple of emotional moments that I think hit right. You do have the crane sequence that a lot of people cringe at, a lot of people moan at, but whenever these Spider-Man movies have sequences where the city of New York has Spider-Man's back, those sequences always work for me. Even if they're cheesy, even if they're schmaltzy and a bit over the top like this one, they still hit the right notes for me. And then, of course, the elements with Gwen's dad and him teaming up with a cop as well as the death of the father has some emotional weight to it.
Leave Gwen out of it.
But the action, the plot itself, pretty forgettable. Then we have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Now, this movie was always a comic book B-movie, and this has a comic book B-movie finale, which is to say, there's a lot of fun action, there's some funny dialogue here and there.
Time to die!
That's the spirit!
I mean us! We are going to die!
It's a bit satisfying when you get to the end of it and Venom eats Carnage, but it's also pretty hollow at its core. On just the action level, it's significantly longer than the finale of the first Venom movie. It ties together a lot more plot elements, whereas the movie kind of had this Bonnie and Clyde romance with Carnage and Shriek, and they're at their wedding, and Venom shows up, and Eddie and Venom have kind of had their own relationship issues, and they're able to work together, whereas Cletus and Carnage aren't able to work together as well. Thus, Venom is able to be triumphant in the end. Likewise, even Dan gets to join in on the fun. So it's all pretty superficial fun, but I enjoyed this finale without it having much depth to it. Number 7, Spider-Man 3. Now, of course, this is easily the weakest of the Raimi Spider-Man films, but I do think it ends on a bit of a high note. This is a very large, big, and long finale to the film as they had a gigantic budget, and you see it on screen here as you have Spider-Man teaming up with Harry Green Goblin to battle Sandman as well as Venom, and there's all sorts of fun and chaos that happens because of that. The part that really works for me is that redemptive arc for Harry, where finally Harry chooses his friends over his hatred, and at the same time, Eddie Brock chooses power and hate over even his life in the finale of it. What are you doing? No! So you have characters making choices that are good and bad that pay off their arcs up to this point in time. Number of problems here as well. Once again, MJ is kidnapped and dangling from spider webs. Some of this CGI, where they just go full CGI characters, I don't think it's aged all that well. For whatever reason, they keep taking Venom's face off to show Topher Grace's face, which I think was just a gigantic misstep if you're gonna do Venom. And so there's a number of things that here are really good, and then there's all sort of those flaws that this movie had all along mixed in there at the same time. So a bit of a back and forth when it comes to my feelings on this one. Number 6, Spider-Man Far From Home. Here, Spider-Man must battle an army of drones controlled by Mysterio while Happy tries to keep a group of high schoolers alive. It's big. It's a lot of fun, and there's some interesting segments in it at the same time. It's at its best when they're doing the Mysterio Mirage stuff. That's some of the coolest stuff in this entire movie. Now, the finale stuff isn't as cool as the first time they did it, but there's still moments that are really cool. Likewise, when Happy is trying to be the hero, but he's still Happy, I got a kick out of that moment, those sequences. There's some funny bits, and Happy gets in on the action and shows that he's not just kind of the sidekick, comedic relief. He's someone that's willing to get in on the action, even put his life in danger to try and save other people.
Who are you? I work with Spider-Man.
You work for Spider-Man?
I work with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man.
And like I said, there's some funny bits in there at the same time. Certain elements of it, I think, kind of fall into that cartoonish zone where you have Peter Parker with like web wings flying through the cloud of drones and things like that, where he just looks too CGI, too kind of detached from reality, that I don't care for that stuff quite as much. And I don't think this one comes to like specifically an emotional payoff. It's much more about the cleverness of the visuals and the trickery of Mysterio more so than emotional payoff. But it fit the movie that we were watching, and so it's good, but it's not great. In fifth place, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. For me, this is one of the trickiest movies on this list to place because the first half of the finale with Electro, pretty forgettable. The second half with the fate of Gwen Stacy, the most gut-wrenching emotional finale on this list. So when it comes to that first half with Electro, one of the most important and trickiest aspects of comic book movies is something called verisimilitude. Technical definition, the appearance of being true or real. When you're watching a comic book movie, we know we're watching something fantastical that isn't real, and it's the filmmaker's job to take the fantastic and ground it in something that we can believe is real. And the segment with Electro, I think, totally violates that. When you're watching a CGI Spider-Man being chased by a teleporting CGI Electro while they're floating in the air and the camera's kind of detached, flying around, nothing in the sequence grounds it, brings it into reality. It just feels like I'm watching my son play a level in Spider-Man PlayStation 4. But then when you move into the second half with the Green Goblin, suddenly it's a much better sequence. The sequence itself is directed pretty fantastic. What gives this sequence its verisimilitude is they take a normal person, put them in this dangerous situation, and everything literally starts to crumble around them. And you just see the terror in her face as she falls, which is what would really happen. And so they put a human in the middle of the fantastic to ground it in reality. And then with the way Mark Webb captures the looks on her face, the desperation of Spider-Man's actions to try and save her, and the fact that he was just a moment too late, and the way the shots unfold in slow-mo of moving from his face down the web to her face and then goes into normal time as the snap happens, it is just absolutely gut-wrenching. And it's followed immediately by a phenomenal performance from Andrew Garfield, who is a world-class talent and pours all of it into that moment, in that sequence. And you see how broken he is over what happened.
No, please.
Fantastic stuff. The movie's not fantastic, but the sequence itself is pretty amazing. And that's what makes it tricky, where half of it, it's like, that's no good. I gotta get pretty high on this list because of just how good it handled the actual death of Gwen Stacy. In fourth place, Spider-Man 2002. Now, by comparison to the final battles in modern Spider-Man MCU films, it feels very small scale in size, but it's a classic Spider-Man situation where Green Goblin creates this dilemma where Spider-Man must choose whether he's going to save a bunch of people or save MJ, his love.
We are who we choose to be. Now choose!
And through his Spider-Manisms, he's able to save both groups of people, the people of New York City join in to help Spider-Man just a little bit when they're able to throw things at Green Goblin, and then it leads to this fight in this abandoned building that's just absolutely brutal as you're seeing this teenage Peter Parker desperately trying to stop this person that he actually does care about, but who's been driven totally mad by this point in time, and his costume's destroyed, there's blood on his face, and it's all visceral and exciting. And as you move into the final moments, what's interesting is that the character arc and payoff here is really that of Norman Osborn, and he's not able to defeat the Green Goblin. Therefore, we see the fulfillment of the tragedy of Norman Osborn.
I have a father. His name was Ben Parker.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Peter Parker's triumphant, but this other character that we do care about fails and dies for it. And so it's exciting in its own way without needing to have gigantic, massive citywide stakes because we care about the characters. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the Spider-Man final battles. Also, I've done a ton of Spider-Man content in the past. I've ranked the movies, the Spider-Man, the villains, my favorite moments. Also, I did this video where I talked about all the canceled Spider-Man movies. Going all the way back to the 1980s, there was going to be a canon film. James Cameron was going to do one. And then the canceled Maguire as well as Garfield films where I talk about everything we know about those ones. It's one of my favorite videos I ever did. You can check all of that out in this playlist right up here when this video is over. In third place, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And of all the finales, this is certainly the most cartoonish because it is an animated film. It goes wild, it goes crazy, but at its core, it has a lot of great little character moments. Each of the Spider-Man gets some moment in the spotlight that pays off the mini journey that they've had or the relationships that they've established. You even get kind of like a little heartbreaking moment when the robot spider dies at one point in time, but they also provide moments even for the villain Kingpin in it, where he finally almost gets his family back in this desperate act that pulls the multiverse together, and as he loses them, as much as he's the villain, there's something very painful in watching a husband and a father almost get his dead family back and then lose them again, and in his madness continue further down this path. But what I love about this one is the way that it gives such finality to the arcs for Miles, who steps in to be the hero, and especially Peter B. Parker, where it closes out with this little moment where he's not sure that he wants to go back. He wants to stay to be the one to sacrifice himself because he's still afraid to take that leap of faith. And through Miles's journey and discovery of what he needed, he's able to give to Peter B. Parker what he needed to hear in order to go back in a hopeful state, trying to be the better person.
How do I know I'm not gonna mess it up? Right. Hate to leap of faith.
I just thought it was such a great little way to close out this big sequence. Now, what actually holds this one back, it's probably a little bit too chaotic when it comes to the actual action for me. And so I like it so much on an emotional level, and it's so satisfying in regards to the story and character arcs. A little bit chaotic with the action, though. Our runner-up, Spider-Man 2. This is an interesting one on the list because the way the movie is kind of structured, they have a big, gigantic action sequence right before you get to the actual final battle. And so when you move into the final sequence, it kind of rearranges the priorities of the sequence. So while you do have Doc Ock and Spider-Man fighting, you do have the building collapsing and Spider-Man having to save MJ and Doc Ock battling his little son that he's created and drowning it in the water. You have big action and spectacle. But what really works here is the character moments, and it pays off emotionally. Two different character arcs in it. First, you've got Peter Parker convincing Dr. Octavius to use all of his willpower to control the arms and decide, I will not die a monster, and is able to redeem this mentor to him, this person that he looked up to, so that he chooses to sacrifice himself to stop this thing that he's created.
It was my dream.
Sometimes, to do what's right, we have to be steady. and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
Powerful, profound stuff. And then right after Peter Parker convinces Dr. Octopus to do that, he turns around and MJ's looking at him. And just the look on her face as she realizes what has been pulling the two of them apart. And that it's not that he's just some weird guy. It's that he's the hero. He's both the people that she's been in love with these movies. It's all in one person, and it all makes sense. And it's so satisfying and powerful in that moment. One of the interesting things that the Raimi Spider-Man movies do is that Peter Parker's journey itself is usually resolved before you get to the finale for the most part. And so what ends up happening is that the finale is about the villains making their final choice. Dr. Octavius is the one that makes the final choice to die redeemed as a hero. And so it just makes for such a compelling, powerful story. And then here, MJ's arc is also completed and she finally realizes what's going on and just makes for a great way to close out a great movie. But coming in first place, and this isn't even remotely close, Spider-Man No Way Home. What a finale to this film. It is firing on all cylinders. On a superficial action level, you have 3 Spider-Men battling 20 years worth of Spider-Man villains on the Statue of Liberty with Doctor Strange in the background. That's pretty amazing. But then it also pauses to just have great moments of humor. You have Andrew Garfield going, "I love you guys." I mean, there's just hilarious moments that fit in the sequence. But then it's just jam-packed with character moments. You have Maguire with Doc Ock, and it just pauses. Do you just see how happy Dr. Octavius is to see a grown-up Peter Parker? And by this point in time, Doc Ock is a full-blown superhero in this movie. Of course, you have Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, saving MJ. And just this past week, they posted the script for the movie on the internet, and it phrases this so well, his response to what happened, having just relived the worst moment of his life when he lost Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But this time, he prevailed. That is just such a profound, powerful, emotional moment. And then, of course, you have a completion of Tom Holland's arc in this film as well as in this trilogy. In one part of it, you have a Peter Parker who's still living out his origin story, wanting revenge for the death of Aunt May. And you have Tobey Maguire stepping in, not allowing him to kill Norman Osborn. Even if it might have potentially killed him, he would gladly step in the way if it would stop Tom Holland's Spider-Man from making such a grave mistake. And then as it kind of moves into the Doctor Strange sequence, you have Holland having to choose to do the right thing, to choose to be Spider-Man at the cost of all the relationships that came with being Peter Parker, and learning with great power comes great responsibility, and paying the ultimate price in this context for that to be true. On every level, this finale worked. On every level, this finale was so satisfying, so crowd-pleasing, that had audiences going absolutely bananas, and they earned it. So without question, it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, remember I've got more like it right over there in that playlist. Also, if you want to prioritize your mental health this year, you can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Sean Chandler. The link is down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.